We've all been there. You're having a normal conversation, maybe about a movie, a news story, or even what you had for dinner, and suddenly the vibe shifts. You state an opinion or a fact, and the person across from you snaps into combat mode. They don't just disagree. They need you to admit you are wrong. They won't let it go. They'll look up articles, bring up things you said 3 years ago, and keep you trapped in a loop until you finally just nod and say, "Fine, you're right," just to make the headache stop. But have you ever wondered what is actually happening inside their brain at that moment? Why is being right more important to them than being liked, being fair, or even being happy? At the end of this video, you won't just understand the hidden insecurity driving this behavior. You'll learn the specific script they are following and exactly how to break it without losing your mind. To most people, being wrong is a minor inconvenience. You realize you made a mistake, you update your information, and you move on. But for a certain percentage of the population, being wrong feels like a physical attack. Neuroscience shows that when these individuals encounter information that contradicts their beliefs, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, lights up. This is the same part of the brain that triggers the fight or flight response. To them, losing an argument isn't a social stumble, it's an existential threat. If they are wrong about a small fact, their brain tells them they are worthless as a person. Psychologists call this fragile high self-esteem. On the surface, they look confident, even arrogant, but underneath, their self-worth is like a house of cards. Being the one who knows is the only thing holding that house together. If you take away their rightness, the whole structure collapses. This is why they use cognitive dissonance as a shield. When faced with clear, undeniable evidence that they are wrong, their brain doesn't accept the truth. Instead, it works overtime to discredit the source, move the goalposts, or rewrite history. Have you ever noticed that the more evidence you give them, the angrier they get? That's because you aren't arguing against a fact. You are arguing against their survival mechanism. In the next section, we're going to look at conversational narcissism and the winner's high, the literal dopamine hit these people get when they force you to concede. One of the most exhausting parts of dealing with someone who always needs to be right is the logic trap. You think that if you just find the right piece of evidence or the perfect way to explain your side, they will finally see reason. But here's the social script secret. You cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Their need to be right is emotional, not logical. When you provide more logic, you are just feeding the fire. They don't hear your facts. They hear a challenge to their dominance. This is where moral elitism comes in. Many of these individuals believe that because they are right, they're also morally superior. To them, you aren't just mistaken, you are uninformed, naive, or wrong-headed. This leads to a phenomenon called the backfire effect. Studies have shown that when we are presented with facts that contradict our core identity, our original beliefs actually become stronger. We dig our heels in. So how do you handle this without ending up in a 3-hour shouting match? Psychologists suggest a technique called the gray rock method. The goal of the person who needs to be right is to get a reaction. They want the win. They want to see you frustrated, and they want to hear you surrender. When you become a gray rock, offering short, non-committal answers like, "I see," that's an interesting perspective, or, "You might be right," you deprive them of the conflict they crave. When there is no friction, there is no fire. You aren't losing the argument. You are opting out of a game that has no winner. But what if you can't walk away? What if it's a boss or a partner? In the final part of this breakdown, we're going to discuss the validation pivot, a high-level social maneuver that lets you keep your dignity while letting them keep their win. The most powerful tool in your social arsenal is the validation pivot. Most people confuse validation with agreement. They think that if they validate the person who needs to be right, they are admitting defeat. But validation simply means acknowledging their reality. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," try saying, "I can see that this is really important to you." This phrase is a psychological kill switch. It acknowledges their emotion without conceding the fact. It moves the conversation from the facts, where they are defensive, to empathy, where they have nothing to fight. The person who always needs to be right is usually the person who feels the most unheard. By understanding the script of their insecurity, you gain the power to stay calm while everyone else is losing their temper. You are just managing a difficult person. You are mastering the hidden dynamics of human interaction. If you've ever dealt with a know-it-all or felt that internal urge to win every argument, you've just taken the first step towards social mastery. Understanding why we act this way is the only way to change the narrative.